Okay. Ready to go. Rock and roll. So, first up, Chief. Who? Chief, which chief? Public safety.
Chief, you're in the first chair. You can go.
Okay, great. Good
You
evening.
guys use your mics tonight. We've got a live stream going on.
Oh, we do? So use the mic here.
Sure. It's on.
It's on?
Yes.
Okay. We okay? Good evening. In front of you, I dropped off, I think for everybody, just a quick summary report, April run statistics, and then the map attached shows incident locations in general, where the 90 or so calls for service happened in Liberty Lake the month of April. Really, if you look through that first page, the biggest couple of investigative type things that didn't turn out to be much. Potentially some kids playing with fire as they're walking around, but we didn't really find them when we got out there, so that happens. A couple of vehicle fires, one self-extinguished with an extinguisher, and another one that didn't turn out. I think it was vehicle malfunction, overheating, as opposed to a fire itself. But the second item there on the Spokane Regional Air Sport Training, you may have, I want to comment on that for a minute, because that's a new program that we're partnering with the Sheriff's Department on, and that's putting our flight medics, so we're putting paramedics in the air with the Sheriff's Department to provide advanced life support out in remote areas of the county. So certainly Liberty Lake back above the lake and in that area would be a candidate for that type of service if there's a place to get a helicopter in, depending on where the location is. But we've been working on this program with them for about a year. A lot of training goes into it because firefighters are getting hoisted up and down and dropped off in the wilderness and that type of thing. So you may have seen that helicopter, the sheriff's helicopter, flying around on the weekends. They're doing a lot of training every weekend. When that program's up and running, I expect an announcement from the sheriff's office here in the next couple months. It looks like they're getting really close to being flight ready. So the interesting part about it is it's a partnership between the sheriff's office, Spokane Valley Fire Department, and the city of Spokane Fire Department. So we jointly provide paramedics that will respond to the airport and then get in the helicopter and go when there's a call needed. So pretty cool program. Just thought I'd fill you in. It certainly has some use out in certain areas in the Liberty Lake area where you may see it in action.
Coordinated with life.
So that's a good question, Steve. We don't. So the big difference is Life Flight is a transport unit. We're not doing transport, we're doing rescue. So we will potentially take somebody from a remote area and bring them to a life flight landing zone where they can then be transported, but we're not trying to get into a competition with the business on the business side of transporting to the hospital. This is more really geared toward dropping medics off in remote areas and allowing them to stabilize the patient, then get the patient somewhere where it can be transported. Yeah, so that's the main difference. The other thing is Life Flight flies typically with one nurse at least, RN on board, and ours, we don't have that level. We're ALS paramedics, but we're not flying with a nurse on board, so it's a little different skill level. Yeah.
Chief, I have a question. I'm looking at your map. It shows the boundaries. So when the high school goes in, do you look at your boundary for service, Fire Station 3 or?
Yeah. So it'll be in our service area.
It will be in.
Yeah. So we'll make that adjustment on all our maps, and that's clearly now the original high school site was like part in and part out. The football field I think was in, and the rest of the campus was like another fire district, District 8. So when when they decided to move down on the flat area, that's fully within our jurisdiction. So we'll be the sole agency providing service out there. Yeah. So that's it on that. A couple of updates from the department. We've got a lot of things going on hiring-wise. I want to thank Dan. King spent a full day with us again. It's not like the first time I have tapped Dan for stuff just because he's always willing. And he does a great job for us. But we had a community affairs assessment for a day where we had half dozen candidates come through, and these guys put them through an assessment center and gave me 3 good candidates on the list to interview, and I'm working through the final stages of making a job offer to one of them. So appreciate that, Dan. And I'll let you know who that is as soon as we wrap up the contract. Other than that, a lot of routine hiring stuff. We got others, Fire Academy we're gearing up for, summer season we're gearing up for, a lot of training going on. We're busy. Do you have any other questions you guys have?
I did see the tiller truck cruising through the neighborhoods. It goes to any call, really, if there's necessary.
What's that?
The tiller truck,
yeah.
I did see it cruising through Liberty Lake on a call, so it's just if needed or...
So it's going to respond to certain types of calls. So it would be a second unit on a medical call. So if 3 is busy on a call and you get a simultaneous call for a medical emergency, the tiller truck will come in from 10 to do that because they're the second closest unit. All structure fire reports of structure fires, they'll be on the first alarm assignment. So there'll be one of five units that respond to every structure fire out in this area. So anytime you have the report of a structural fire or a fire inside a structure, they're going to be on that call. Car fires, probably not. That's typically an engine response. But those are the typical times you'd see them out here. Or they could have just been training, driving around. A lot of training goes into driving that.
Just always fun to see. One of the great piece of apparatus you guys got.
Right. Lastly, before I forget, I just want to say, appreciate all the city's work on the project that we partnered with you guys on. Our board is really appreciative of the fact that this coalition came together, and kind of an abnormal coalition to get together. School district, fire district, Brian was involved, the city, a lot of staff time. Everybody involved, council members involved, meeting with Senator Patton and others. But it just goes to show you, what collaboration can do and what good leadership from city staff and others can get done. And so proud to be part of that. And our board's looking to do a little coffee get together or something in the near future and invite everybody out for a celebration.
Kind of like Rainy roast or something.
Really kind of groundbreaking.
No, but I think just going back a little bit in regards to our partnership didn't just start with Henry Rowan. It started with, I was in depth, I think, back in the day when we put together the lift. And when your board and the city came together and said, hey, we're going to put our incremental property tax into the pool to help some of the projects to develop in our community.
Yeah.
And I think that was a true turning point in the relationship between the fire district and the city of Liberty Lake. And again, this is just a continuance of it.
Right.
It could be better.
No, it's an example of good government, and that's because it benefits the citizens of Liberty Lake, the public safety population in Liberty Lake. With mobility, you'll get development, you'll get a lot of benefit from that, and that project really helps with mobility from a safety perspective, just a movement and development perspective in the city. So kudos to everybody involved. It's remarkable getting that much money moved up that quickly and all of it in one shot. So awesome job.
Thanks, Chief. No, Chief.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. One of the things that the Chief did not mention is that we're known as the Brian and Brian Show at the Spokane Regional Emergency Communications Board, and we are each elected back to our positions as Chief Collins being the chair, myself as the vice chair for another year. So they get to put up with us for another year. So on the screens you have our crime stats for the month of April. With 627 calls for service for the month is, again, it's kind of an uptick for us, busier than usual. A couple of the highlights to just really focus on is actually on the second page. Tate, if you could just move down a page. So we had a trailer burglarized and several vehicles that were prowled over in the Stonehill area. There was some surveillance video that was captured of that event that gets broadcast to all of our officers through a briefing that we do. And the picture was, it's not high quality digital clear, middle of the day picture. It's in the middle of the night, a little bit grainy. However, based on that picture, one of our officers, Officer Bowman, who's last year's Officer of the Year, was patrolling, and this is a couple days later, saw that vehicle, recognized it as being involved in that incident, was able to impound that car for evidence, and we were able to locate some evidence inside of that car based on a search warrant that was conducted. Actually, we didn't have to do a search warrant. The owner wanted it back bad enough. He gave us consent once he found out we had his car. And so we recovered some evidence in there, which led us to locating a person of interest in those burglary and vehicle prowl cases. And really, that's just kudos to Officer Bowman paying attention, putting together something he saw a few days ago to a car he saw at the zip trip. So good work by our agency on that, and specifically Officer Bowman. Other than that, just a couple other things is that during our officer recruitment, finally, we had some interviews yesterday, so Mayor Katie and I were involved in those. We interviewed 3 candidates for 2 open positions that we have, and glad to say that we were able to provide conditional offers of employment to 2 people. So they've accepted those conditional offers of employment. So next step is continued background investigations for them, which means a polygraph, psychological, physical, and drug testing. Once that's completed, then we can give them their final offer of employment and get them on board and get them to work. So interviews went very well. Great candidates. One is from Seattle Police Department that is now living in our area. And the second person is an officer for the Sutherland, Oregon Police Department, who has family located here in our area and is excited to be back in the Liberty Lake area. Also, during our interview, it's just interesting, he said that he was featured in the Splash article several years ago because he was deployed to Iraq for a long period of time. And him and his family being from here, the Splash did an article when he returned. So I decided to look that up. So it's from 2009, and it was a very well-done article about his deployment and things that he accomplished serving our country. So we're excited to have him back in our community and be part of our police department. Today was the Law Enforcement Memorial Service at the Public Safety Building, where 3 names were added to the Law Enforcement Memorial Wall. So a somber day for sure, but it was a wonderful ceremony. And other than that, I'm going to talk about some community outreach things that we did this month. So Tate, if I could have you pull up some of the pictures that I sent. So on April 27th, we had a car show and a cruise at the Liberty Lake Police Department, where we unveiled our new Liberty Lake Police Department tribute car that is a memorial to officers that have been killed in the line of duty in both Washington State and northern Idaho. So this is all done through donations. The car was donated to the city. All the vinyl wrap was donated. All the work on the car was donated. The lights were donated. So there was no funds expended by the city for this car, other than we're paying for the gas and insurance on it. So there you see the car. It's an older Crown Victoria. It's vinyl wrapped, and that's the picture of the hood at the bottom. And it has the names of all the fallen officers in Washington State and northern Idaho listed on there. It also includes canines that have been killed in line of duty, and then we also included, because they are not honored, is officers that were perhaps experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder and committed suicide as a result. So those names were also added to our tribute card. So Sergeant Clint Gibson's name is included in that. So this car was very well received at that event, received lots of media attention. KHQ came out, Crim 2 came out, Spokesman Review's doing an article on it, Splash is doing an article, Gazette's put the information out as well. Because of all that media attention, unfortunately, this car is in high demand across the state. So agencies that have officers whose name is on there want that car to be in their community for their community events or parades, and we'll try our best to make that happen. But it's booked for the entire summer. We're very proud of that project. So If you scroll down, Tate, just a little bit. The other thing that we did is we had a staff training day, city training day. Part of that involved the police department providing instruction about active shooter and how to respond in those situations. And then also Spokane Valley Fire Department came out and talked about safety issues and how to use fire extinguisher and those types of things. So we appreciate that from the Valley Fire Department coming out and training our staff on that day. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. So if there's questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Good job, Chief.
Question, Brian?
Yes.
Tell me about the idea of the complete memorial car, how that got started.
So what happened, so 2 years ago, Officer Bogenreef and I were attending a Special Olympics conference in Phoenix, Arizona. And during that conference, Phoenix Police Department had a tribute car at that event. And obviously Phoenix being a bigger city, their car was just dedicated to Phoenix police officers that were killed in the line of duty. So we saw that car, just thought it was pretty cool. Mike Bogenreef says, this would be something that I think we should do back in Liberty Lake. And so we came back really looking for a car to do something with, and had a donor that gave us this car, and that's what started it. So then I turned it over to Officer Bogenreef and a gentleman named John Bujosa, who is a volunteer for us. He's what we call our police ambassador. So he takes our cars to parades and events and things like that. This is a dream of his, is to build a tribute car one day. So we provided them that opportunity, and they ran with it. And other than that, I didn't see it until the day of the unveiling on the 27th.
First, I really want to compliment Officer Bowman for the work he did on tracking that car down. It was an incredible piece of work. I was there that night, and he sent me a message. He said, "I think I found the car," and the odds of that were so slim. To be able to pick that up, and his professionalism was remarkable. I also really want to thank you and John and Officer Bogenreef for all the work you guys put into this. I was at that event, and there were some concerns. It was such a rainy day and a lot of hail about the turnout, but it was probably one of the best turnouts that I think we've had for this event, and the car was just remarkably done. It was so neat to see those officers recognized and that gave the ultimate sacrifice. So thank you for all your work, and John's and Officer Bogenreef's.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Lisa,
Actually, I think
we're going to the library first.
Jocelyn's up next.
PowerPoint,
She has a movie
if it works.
if it works.
All right, Mayor, Council, good evening. I just have a few things to report about the library. First, some general statistics. Things are still being checked out, which is wonderful. About 7,700 physical books, about 1,500 ebooks and audiobooks. We had about 4,600 people through the doors last month. People are still coming to our program. Story time, as you can see, is still really popular. Move and Groove being the most popular, the ones where the kids just get to come in and dance and sing. They really enjoy that. Jandy goes and does outreach at a preschool here in town every 3 Tuesdays out of the month. So that's the outreach story time. Then we had some school age programs, some teen programs, and of course some adult programs. So we had a pretty good turnout for those this month. In your packet, you probably saw the proposed contract for the Community Needs Assessment and Library Master Plan. I just wanted to remind you what the project is and tell you a little bit about it. So we're doing this to obtain an objective set of findings about the community and about the library, and basically just gaining a deeper understanding of the community so that it can help us identify the community's current and anticipated needs, also the community's vision for itself. And this information will help us to develop a strategic plan and strategic priorities. And we will also be conducting a space needs assessment, taking a look at our facility. Once we have an idea of where we want to go strategically, how's our facility look in conjunction with that? So we'll use the data by, again, identifying those focus areas, developing that strategic plan and those priorities. And then once we have all of that data, we'll share it with the community and everything. And one of the interesting things about it is Some of the data that we'll probably have access to, they're going to be looking at like some market segmentation and doing some SWOT analyses and things like that. So it could be a benefit to other city departments and maybe even some businesses in the community. So I think it's pretty cool. The firm that we went with, Kimberly Bolin and Associates, they were our highest qualified, most responsive proposal. They had very clearly demonstrated expertise in community engagement and developing strategic plans and also in conducting these kinds of space needs assessments. And they had really strong reference checks. I called all of the references they provided and they were all just stellar, and many of them had used them more than once, which to me is a very key indicator this is a good firm to go with. Should you approve this, the timeline we're looking at would be May, June, doing a kickoff meeting where we really set down exactly what we're doing and our exact timeline. Over the summer, we'll be doing data gathering and some analysis of that data, with September, October being when they do more of the community engagement work. That's because usually over the summer, it's more of a challenge to get people into doing focus groups or being able to set up meetings and things. We'll also do our space needs assessment at that time. October, November is when we'll do sort of a little retreat where we take all of the data and then start packaging it out. Then they'll write it all up in November, and then in December they'll distribute it. They'll come and do a presentation to council and everything like that. So now some fun stuff. We had a Lego contest last month for ages 5 to 18, and these were the 3 winners that we had. One you can see was Lego Ninja Warrior, so I thought that was kind of awesome. One built an airplane out of Legos, and then another one did a little dream house, so that was pretty cool. We also had, can you click the video, see if it'll work? We also had Lego Mindstorm Robotics in. A community member taught the class, and this is when they were having them try and battle each other, so they'd coded them to try and battle each other a little bit.
That is cool.
Was there sound? No sound?
There wasn't any sound on the video, so I'm sure there was sound in the room. So, may seem like there's minimal movement and stuff, but the background of that, the coding behind it, and the learning that's involved in coding them to be able to do those things is pretty cool. We also had our first Peeps Diorama contest. So these were the 3 winners that we had. So Harry Peeper Quidditch match, Peeper Rabbit, and my favorite, which was War of the Peeps. So hopefully we will do this again next year and have even more entries. And then this May, reminder, we're closed all day this Thursday because we are doing inventory. That means we are scanning all of our books on the shelf, so that will be a nice long day. We have a number of STEAM programs going on this month. We've got Code Club Bloxels again, Ozobots, Science of Sound with Radical Rick, Build It with Toothpicks and Marshmallows, and this one is for all ages, a 3D fishing lure design class. So you'll be designing it online, and then once you have something you really like, you'll get to print it on our 3D printer. So we do not provide the hooks. But if you know anybody who's into fishing and might like to learn a little bit about design and coding and whatnot, this could be good for them. That is this Saturday. We're also doing some Mother's Day gifts for tweens, teen Oreo challenges. I don't know exactly what they're going to be doing, but fun things with a variety of Oreo flavors. There's an introduction to genealogy class that's happening at the moment. And then at the end of the month, we have simple watercolor poppies. And of course, you can always find our events online on our calendar. And then I wanted to highlight this one, which happens in June, but I'm starting to get the word out now. We partnered with the Washington Center of the Book to get an author in on June 8th. She was the winner of the 2018 Washington Book Prize. I may not have the name exactly right. And she's also a journalist and has been nominated for Pulitzer Prizes. But she wrote a memoir, in the memoir biography category, she wrote The Spider and the Fly, which is sort of a true crime novel, where she's interviewing somebody who's a serial killer. So she's going to come in and do a short reading and talk about the publishing and the writing process for people who are interested. And those are some things that are going on at the library.
Wow.
Yes.
Jocelyn, the thing with the official learner, I like how you tied in, it'll all be done online.
What that means, if you don't get it done in the class, you can take it home and work on it and bring your design back.
Thank you for that explanation.
No pun intended.
Nice tie
In your look forward in your assessment, are you going to invite some of our school district librarians? You know, we now have a middle school and then 2 grade schools and a new high school. I know that they're going through an assessment of library services and so forth. I think it'd be kind of cool to work with them a little bit.
I'll make sure that we get in touch with them as key stakeholders, I think, in our community. So,
Thanks, Jocelyn. Very important. Now, Lisa?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Scott first to give you an update on Trailhead and the Signal at Signal.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so back to give an update on the Trailhead Master Plan. And clicker. So one of the things that's transpired since last meeting is that we've started the Photoshop evaluation process, and we finalized the contract with Amoresco, who is actually doing the evaluation. Uh-oh.
Click it again. There you go.
Oh, okay.
We're not doing anything.
I'm just going to...
He was like, where'd it go?
Yeah, okay. So, basically there's, really the only thing you need to look at on this slide is the 3 things on the left. And that's basically the first step is they kind of gather up a bunch, all the data that you have. If you have spreadsheets or information on your HVAC system or any of that kind of stuff. That's what happens in that step. The next step, basically they actually go out and evaluate the facility, and as part of that, they'll try and get any institutional knowledge they can from people that have knowledge of the facility itself. So, for example, Jeff, I think, knows a lot about our facilities and some others that have been here for a long time. So you try and get that out of their brain and into a common database as part of this program. Then the third step is to evaluate it. I'm going to have to build another slide, I think. Oh, jeez. Okay, so the important thing here is that the asset review. I want to talk about that a little bit, and that's where Jen's crew spent a lot of time working with Amoresco, trying to provide them data, and really Jen's been the driver on that, and they spent a lot of time doing it. The other thing to notice about this screen is that there's the boxes below the red line. There's a lot of boxes there, right? A lot of things, a lot of steps that had to happen, and you can see the green ones are steps that have been completed. So really, all we've got is the 2 on the lower right-hand corner that have to be completed, and it's not important what's in those boxes, but it's just a ton of steps. So, so what's the schedule for completing it? Jen started it back in February, 1st of February. So we've been at it for a while, and then we're estimating by May 15th we'll have some kind of a determination from them. They'll complete their evaluation and get it to us. At which time the staff or whoever the appropriate people are going to make some determinations about, hey, where are we going to go with this building? And that's really important step, I think, in the overall master plan process. Because I think a lot of people would be disappointed if all we did was paint the building, and so that would be very progressive thinking. So another step we've taken forward is with the work group that we've talked about in previous meetings, and I think we've got Jen and Chris and I met and kind of defined, hey, what are we trying to accomplish with the work group? And, you know, the thing we most want to help with is, I guess they're brainstorming, but a lot of it is help with the RFQ process. Because what we really, the next step we need to get to is an RFQ. Because we want to get to the point where we have a couple different options for you with pricing that, you know, we got some pictures. You have some stuff you can look at. Yeah, we kind of like that, we don't like that. So the idea with what we're doing with the RFQ, I'll talk a little bit more about later. So details of the operation, you know, we're going to meet, at least to start, we're meeting twice a month for probably a month or two, and then we'll probably go to once a month after that. You know, usually a 4 o'clock meeting works good, and we got to work around the Arts Commission and Planning Commission and all that, but we're working out those details. So how was it formed? We had 8 overall people different people presented to us that were interested in the Trailhead work group. We talked. One of them dropped out, and then we talked to 7 others. And we came in and talked to them for about, Jen, Chris and I, we talked to them for about 45 minutes to an hour each. And just kind of tried to get a feeling of where they were coming from. So that was the process. So we, the work group itself, I think I mentioned our first group meeting is next week. We haven't nailed down the date yet, but it is next week. So what's the makeup of the work group? Okay, we ended up with we have 7 people. They're all within the city of Liberty Lake.
I'm sorry, how many people?
7. They're all within the city of Liberty Lake. We've got some from the north side. We've got some from the south side. We've got a financial planner. We have somebody with a master's in recreation. We've got a couple golfers. We've got, I think, two or three on the work group are golfers. So we didn't want an all golf work group. So I think we have a good group. So I think I'm not prepared to announce the names tonight because there's one person I still have not been able to contact, and I wouldn't want them to hear about it on the news, right? So we'll give you more details of that to follow.
So you have 7 of those individuals? Is that, in that 7, is that counting yourself and Jen and Chris?
It does.
Okay, so really you have, what, 4?
We have 4. There's 7 total on the work group, but there's
How many of these people live in Liberty Lake?
all of them.
Chris lives in Liberty Lake, Jen lives in Liberty Lake, you live in Liberty Lake?
Oh, I live, no, I live in Liberty Lake, yes.
Community members. Right.
Okay, well, good clarification, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So the people that you selected outside of the city staff all live in Liberty Lake?
Yes, correct. Okay, so as I mentioned, the next step is to prepare an RFQ for design services. Again, the goal is to get to the place where we have some pictures and some pricing of some sort that the council can start really dialing into and figuring out what path we want to take forward. So early in the process here, I put together a Gantt chart on things that had to be done, or thought, and a timeline. And so the timeline for advertising and bidding the RFQ is June 6th. So we could be farther along in the process, but I think 5 weeks we can get quite a bit closer to that goal, that milestone. We might be another week or or whatever, but we're fairly close to where we thought we'd be at this time. We're not totally out of whack. And that's all I had for a presentation for today. Yes.
Scott, originally it was an RFQ/RFP process with like a closed envelope or something like that. On the tail end, are we actually moving away from it, or are you just calling it RFQ, or you talk about?
When you're looking at consultant or design services, you're not actually allowed to do an RFP. It can't be related to pricing. So it actually is a request for qualifications. So the things we'll put in the RFQ are things like, give me 3 projects that you've done where a golf course and a restaurant were combined, a high-end restaurant were combined. It's those types of, basically qualifiers that you put in the RFQ.
So can you not do an RFQ, do the qualification/RFP?
Yeah, we haven't really nailed the process down completely, but we might ask for pricing also in their packages that we wouldn't open until we've evaluated the RFQ.
That's the way I understood it.
Yeah, okay.
Start as an RFQ,
Yeah.
/RFP, so we can say, well, here's the qualifications, this is the one, this is the clear winner, oh, this one's triple the amount of everybody else.
Right.
So,
The other thing in the state of Washington, you're not allowed to negotiate on engineering services, but what you can do is modify scope. So you can negotiate with them and modifying scope, but you can't negotiate with them necessarily on price.
oh, gotcha.
Can I add a point of clarification? So we thought, and Scott and I talked about this earlier today, but we're really selecting them based on their qualifications and experience, not their proposal, because the proposal will come later after you retain someone. But what we didn't want to do was have a bunch of consultants put together proposals, and now we're picking a project. And we really didn't want to do that. We really wanted, because they need input from the council, they need input from the community, and there's a whole, and then another question in the qualification is, how do you plan to engage the council? How do you plan to engage the community to get those kind of, those types of
That makes
feedback?
great sense, yeah, thank you.
So,
No question.
and that's something we're really hoping the work group can help us with, is identifying some of those types of criteria that, you know, make sense for something like this, so.
Thank you.
Okay. That's
Thank
it.
you for all your work put into this point, to everybody involved.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? We're done. Take about a 20-minute break.
Lisa-
Oh, no, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, oh, she's coming back.
She's busy, so.
No, at least you don't have an hour.
Mayor, Council, you have before you on your desks a PEBS report along with some collateral information from us. I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about development project highlights. And do we have that up?
The original.
The ridgeline, yes, please. So first of all, we did receive the full plans for the high school in this last week, and so we are getting that review underway. There's still some materials that we are collecting on that, bits and pieces that might be missing, but it is substantially complete, and so we are getting the review underway. We also have River Crossing East Edition final plat in for review. For those of you who are familiar with the Rudine project over on Knox Avenue, we had a pre-application for the second building. Phase 2 of that, since they fully leased phase 1. So things are moving right along with that as well. We also have a pre-application meeting a little later this week for Orchard Park Lofts. It's 48 multifamily units that are going to be located directly south of Orchard Park, west of Harvest Parkway. So south.
Are those duplexes, townhomes, are
They're-
you allowed to share that yet?
Well, so they are multifamily. So I'm not sure based upon the application yet. We'll know more a little bit later in the week.
Lisa, that we've done by Mission Avenue to the south then, right?
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
excuse me for a second, you don't know based on the application what it's going to be?
It's a pre-application meeting. We have, it just says multifamily. I don't know whether it's going to be townhome style. I suspect that they are based upon the site configuration. We've got a site plan. I haven't seen the elevations yet.
And Lisa, if I could add, so these are the ones across from Orchard Park?
They're directly
east.
south of Orchard
Oh,
Park.
directly south, okay. Thank you.
We also, I thought I'd share with you that we issued 22 certificates of occupancy for housing units in April alone. And based upon our April 2019 submission to OFM on data, on our building permit data, it looks like we are going to, we're predicting that our population estimates are just under 11,000. With those 22 COs that we issued in April, that actually bumps us up above 11,000. So just thought I'd share that. Also, things are ramping up pretty rapidly for us in terms of our building permits. Right now we have 82 active commercial building permits and 186 active residential building permits. Rudy and Wayne did 87 inspections last week. So we are doing everything we can to try and streamline and maximize our efficiency. We've made some changes in terms of workload balancing to try and accommodate that. We're also talking to Greg Rogers with the fire district about amending our contract for service with them so that they will, instead of being a fill-in role with our fire, which really they're not anyhow. They do quite a bit of our fire reviews, but ramping that up to be a full-blown, similar to what Spokane Valley has. And so we are kicking around some changes to that. That's something that's likely to come back to you, probably not until June, but I did want to give you a heads up on that. And again, that's trying to maximize our efficiency, but also recognizing that when the high school plans are in, and it's a pretty heavy lift, and it will be a pretty heavy lift in terms of inspections and whatnot. I'm so sorry. We are looking at hiring or recruiting for a part-time building inspector, at least for the summer months. And so we're ramping up to do that right now. We do have the money in our budget for at least 7 or 8 weeks, which would probably get us through the peak of the review for the high school, as well as kind of the peak of summer inspections. So beyond that, we'll have to take a look at where we are. It's a pretty active market right now, and we just stay tuned. We may be coming back to you to talk about extending that part-time beyond the 7 or 8 weeks that I have budgeted.
Lisa, question.
Yes, sir.
On the 82 active commercial building permits, is that a combination of new commercial and remodeling of commercial?
Yes, it's a combination of both.
Okay, great, thank you.
Also, just a couple things. So the tree ordinance that you passed a few weeks ago is now in effect, and we have updated our brochure. We will have copies of that available for you at Farmers Market, and hopefully it's a kinder, gentler brochure that hopefully will provide people with good information and guidelines.
I suspect we're going to go through these very quickly at the market, so we might want to keep some extras on hand.
Yep,
in case we need to run back here and grab some.
Absolutely, we've printed out 100. And I think that's probably a good start. We can always print more if need be.
We will go through those rapidly.
Very well done, very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, other code amendments, food truck ordinance, we will have the public hearing next council meeting. Design review ordinance, we'll be doing the review. The date is wrong. I'll be doing the workshop on the 21st on that, with the hearing in early June. So the small cell code amendments, Planning Commission will be workshopping it again, and tentatively we'd like to have a draft of the ordinance. We're not there yet, and so we're hoping to have a hearing in June. It may require that Planning Commission commits to a special workshop to keep the timeline on this, or we may slip a little behind what the time in which you have to adopt the franchise agreement. Also working with Sean on the franchise agreement even as we speak. So, and we still hope to have a hearing in early July and maybe mid-July before we can do that. But working as diligently as we can to make sure that it's a good ordinance. And I also did include a copy of the docket and the timeline for our 2019 comprehensive plan and code amendments. I think we have a total of 10. So it's going to be Planning Commission is going to be very busy over the course of the next several months. So with that, I stand for questions, or sit as the case may be.
So a quick question, Lisa, is the graphics that you had for Ridgeline High School, are those to the point where we might be able to get copies of those for the farmers market just to put on our board, or are they not to
Well-
that point yet?
well,
Because I know
they-
people are curious about the layout and things like that.
They
not
are, so
necessarily
we-
the pictures.
Yeah, they are. We've already done our design review. As you may recall, public facilities under the current code aren't subject to the planning commission design review, but we did go through a design review process with them, and they really, I think they really nailed it. So yeah, so that is an official submission. We could certainly do, something like that. The one thing I would say is that just a reminder that it's not our project, it's their project.
You can put
I think it's more just to have,
draft on it or
just to
something.
have one to hang out there.
Absolutely.
So Lisa, what we might do is ask the school district to give us a graphic that we can use at farmer's market.
Okay,
Yeah, that might be.
That'd be great. And again, that 8.5, that 11 by 17 size is really, usually works pretty well for discussion. We
Yeah.
have limited space on our boards. So I know we're quickly gathering information that we want to share this summer, so I appreciate that.
very good.
Okay?
Oh, and more golf cart registration applications in the
We're staying at the 400 mark.
I'm out of stickers. We can do that.
Okay. Anything else? We're going to go for a 15-minute break and come back at 7 o'clock. Thank you for the beautiful blue skies and the green grass and the rains that fall upon our fields and just this wonderful community. Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks for the service. So all present and recorded. The agenda's before you. Any additions, corrections to the agenda?
Mayor, I move the agenda with one modification to include executive session as number 8 and move the rest of them down. The executive session will be in relation to property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any other additions, subtractions? Hearing none, please say aye.
Aye.
There we go. For citizen comments. I got 2 right here. Tom Stanley.
How you doing? My name's Tom Stanley, resident of Liberty Lake. Also, because I don't want to have any free time, I'm the president of Riverview Little League. We had our opening day April 27th, and I wanted to give kudos to the grounds crew. What a magnificent job they did. Mike, I believe his name was, he helped us set up the tent. Didn't need to, but he did. And how he got the lines on the field with the wind blowing are beyond me. So just wanted to say what an excellent job he did and appreciate the support.
Thanks. Thank you. Mark?
Yeah.
My name is Mark Saba. I live on 1221 North Malvern. On April 16th, I submitted a petition to all of you requesting 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on Malvern Road between Mission and Boone. Well, I want to give you a little update. 2 days after the petition was submitted, we had a radar, I guess you call it a radar station that shows everyone's speed limit put up during the school hours. Thank you. And there was added police presence out there during the school hours. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. And the most important thing is on the 25th, 2 signs are put up. I wanted, on behalf of everyone who lives on Malvern Road, it worked. I mean, people are crawling now on Malvern Road instead of speeding. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Except one thing was brought to my attention. I know I got 2 more minutes here. I'm going to take advantage of it. I feel like I'm at the NFL draft and I'm on the clock, but it is what it is. Mike, Councilman Kennedy and I have been talking about an additional sign, and it was our understanding that one had been ordered. Are we correct?
What was the additional sign?
It was an additional sign that was going to be back-to-back, 25 mile, and it was going to be on the curve around
By the mailbox.
by the mailboxes.
It has not been ordered.
Had not been ordered, okay. Something that we can address maybe down the road, we can look at that. But again, hey, I can't believe how quick it was. Everybody in the neighborhood is just elated. Thanks a lot, and God bless you all. Great.
Good project there, Scott, the new side.
I actually got to talk to a lot of the neighbors out there. I parked the patrol car there one day and sat out there and had a number of neighbors thank us because there was a number of officers in the area making sure that people were going the appropriate speed limit. So thank you guys for bringing it to our attention. It was well needed, and I saw a lot of people slow down for sure.
Oh, absolutely, it's great.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out, I appreciate Scott getting on this as fast as he did. What was comical was that for Scott and I, as we were talking about this, and the comment was made, well, Steve's going to bring the sign out there and show the speed. And I go, my God, that's fantastic. So early in the morning I go by, or he sent me a picture of the sign, and I go, oh, fantastic, because I immediately get in my car and I drive over there, no sign. So I talked to Scott, between the two of us, we thought somebody had stolen it. So
Maybe a little too portable.
we had to know what Steven said, oh, I took it away. So we thought I got it stolen immediately. Thank you.
Hopefully it wasn't while I was sitting there in the patrol car. That'd be embarrassing.
There we go. Other citizen comments? Another shot about it. Chief's now a big resident over there.
Yes, I am,
Is that
so,
your
yes, yes.
That's right.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, earlier tonight at the workshop, you heard about our tribute car unveiling, and so I told you that the person responsible for that is John Bujosa, our volunteer police ambassador, and he is here tonight. He showed up. So, John, if you, just want you to be recognized. So it became a labor of love, and he's not liking me so much right now because, in addition to his full-time job, he's now traveling the state in our tribute car. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Welcome. Other comments? We'll move forward. Okay. We're at the reports, city board and commission reports. Who wants to be first?
Go with salary.
Salary commission?
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Joan Wisman, and I'm the chairman of the Salary Commission, as well as Holly and Jim. Raise your hand. So we went through a full process. I think we started in February. So we have a little presentation to show you what process we went through and what our findings and results and final decision were. So the first was the process. We looked at the objective that we were headed towards. What was the job role? Did we all have the same definition of the job role? What was our market data? And then what was our recommendation? Okay. So the objective one, we had the ordinance, which we were given. Basically, to base salaries of elected officials on realistic standards, pay according to the duties of their offices, and so citizens of the highest quality may be attracted to the public service. Okay. We added to that a commission philosophy. The salary commission is to attract top candidates and pay fair compensation for work and compliance with statutory requirements. Okay. So that was our objective and our philosophy. The role, we actually looked at the mayor and councilman handbook. There's actually a handbook, so we looked at that. It's published by the Association of Washington Cities, as well as Municipal Research and Services Center of Washington. Okay, it's quite a thick handbook. And that is public information. We sent a questionnaire to the mayor and the council members. We got a 75% response rate. And then we also did in-person interviews with the same folks. We got 100% attendance on that. It was very good because we had questions that were written, but sometimes we had questions of the questions or the responses, so it was good to be able to drill down on that. And we did look at statutory requirements. Thank you to our city attorney, Sean. We sent a list of questions as to, did we have to follow FLSA? Did we have any other legal things that we had to look at to make sure we're in compliance? Okay. Market data. So what we did was we started with a list of all of the cities in Washington State. Okay? And we looked at mayor and council members, those two roles. There's actually a survey, a state survey, that has this information, and we looked at those two. We looked at the parameters of the population of 10,000 to 30,000. We didn't want to get behind the 8 ball and only do the 10,000 to 12,000, so we wanted to look at that broad population. We looked at the form of government. We actually looked at it and made a significant difference from the salary survey, whether or not we were mayor council or whether or not it was council manager. So we looked at the cities that actually had our form of government. Okay? We did remove some data for mayor roles that were full-time or benefits eligible. There were some cities that actually had that job, that the person was working 30, 35 hours or more or full-time, so we didn't think that was comparable to ours because we had actually looked at the questionnaire. The council members were about 10 to 12 hours a week, and the mayor is about 20 hours a week, about part-time. We also aged the data. I'm not sure if you guys know what that means, but some of this data was actually in the survey, was pretty old. RJ actually went in and looked at it and went back to where we started at 2014, the last time we did a salary increase. I actually took it using inflation and aged it forward to January 1 of 2020. That is a standard compensation methodology. Okay? Again, we don't want to be behind the 8 ball. We want to age it forward. Okay? And the reason why we picked January is because that's what our data goes into effect. Okay. Market data results. We had a handout we did for the public hearing. The mayor, we actually had 13 cities that fit our parameters. The age average compensation was $2,249 a month. Council members, there's 22 cities, and the age average compensation was $692. The data, after we took the data and aged it forward. Just to give a little history of where we've been and where we're going, not sure you can see this, but I think there was a salary commission that happened in 2010, okay? And that's when the salaries were determined of $400 a month and $1,250 a month. $400 for the council member, $1,250 for the mayor. They actually did not implement it. They had the numbers, but they didn't implement it. In 2014, they had another salary commission that actually decided to implement, but they actually took the numbers back from 2010 and implemented them in 2014. Okay? So just to say where we've gone. We also did an exercise just to say if you were, we know you're not, employees, if we would have taken the salary increase that the city employees got, where would it have been? To kind of say, that's our minimum that we would give at least the same as the employees, but the market data showed more than that. Okay? That's where the history lesson. So our recommendation is for the mayor, both of them, to get an 80% increase. The mayor would be $2,250 a month, and the council members be $720 a month. That would go into effect January 1, 2020. Any questions? Yes.
Not a question as much as a thank you to you and everybody involved. This is probably one of the most detailed and thought through processes that we've seen from a salary commission standpoint. So thank you for all your efforts. I know it took a lot of time on your guys' part.
Yeah, thank you for my commissioners that met every week, and thank you to the staff, because the staff has been wonderful to support us, especially RJ and Tricia to get all the data for us.
So, quick question. So this will go into effect in January 2020, and then this commission will again look at 2021. and
Yes.
2022, so I didn't want to get ahead of you, but
Yes, the ordinance actually states that we will meet once a year. I'm not sure that we will need to do this extensive unless something significant changes. So I don't foresee a questionnaire and interviews unless the role significant changes. But we will go back to those cities. We will look at the market data, see if anything has changed, or if we decide as a commission to say, we're at least going to give inflation. But we will meet once a year.
So I'd like to direct the staff, what does the ordinance say when such a phenomenon would take place?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear that. Couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
What does the ordinance say as far as when this would take place? Not the salary commission, the ordinance. What does it say?
You guys just modified it to say that the salary commission must meet once a year.
And it says
I understand
effective
that,
at
but
the
I'm-
start of the next calendar
No, I
year.
don't think it does, but.
The ordinance actually says it can go in immediately, but the state says it can go in immediately. Our ordinance says it goes to January of the next year. Correct. Is what our ordinance says.
So we'd like to see that. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to my commissioners. We'll see you next year.
Okay, and then we have Planning Commission, Parks and Arts Commission.
Okay. Well, the Parks and Arts Commissioner is very busy right now. We are doing, we have a utility box call to art out that the selection committee is ready to give us recommendations at our next meeting. We also purchased our first utility box that we are going to plan to wrap, potentially with the art from the Pavilion Park box that we had to take off. But hopefully we can do more of that since we don't have a lot of utility boxes and we can put them in the parks where we'd like. We also have a call to artists out for goat statues. That's been sent out and we're working on our story walk. Our next meeting we will have a working prototype from our students. The other thing we've been working on is pickleball in our community. It's very popular. And so we've been working with the Inland Northwest Pickleball Club, and they are working to help us get our Liberty Lake courts that are in our park on kind of all the drop-in sites. Apparently there are drop-in sites where people look to go play, so we want to be on those sites. We also want to give the community offerings, because we have these courts. So they're willing to do exhibition games and potentially lessons for our community members. And they are giving us recommendations on how to stripe the courts going forward. They have a way that they like to have them so that you get actually 4 out of 1 tennis court, which is interesting. So potentially in Orchard Park then, they were very interested because we have so many tennis courts, they could have a big tournament there because we potentially have 32 courts for a tournament, which would be great. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Questions?
Question.
Yeah.
Brandon, were you able to save the wrap off that box in Pavilion Park?
We cannot save the wrap, but CW Wraps is willing to just redo it for us at no cost.
Is that going to go back in Pavilion Park?
Yes, that's the plan.
That is an option.
It's actually like a cabinet, so what we were thinking we might do is replace the current pickleball box with that and put the equipment inside of it and wrap it, and then move that to another park where we have pickleball. But obviously we can think of other options. I liked that spot, but because you could see it from everywhere, but we'll have to see. We'd have to pour a pad anyway, so we'll have to discuss
Well,
locations.
the real benefit of being able to have our own boxes, then you can put them anywhere you want, and you can rotate them also, which is great. I'm thrilled that you guys do it.
Yep.
Regarding the striping of tennis versus pickleball,
Mhm.
this may be a stupid question, but are you talking about having different colors of striping so it's a little easier for your eye to pick up while you're out there?
Apparently, the striping for pickleball doesn't mess up tennis players. I don't know anything about it, but I thought, oh gosh, is it going to be really confusing with all these lines on the court? But my pickleball experts say it won't mess up the tennis courts at all. Everyone will know just what to do.
Is there any tennis experts involved? I mean, I'm actually being serious about that. It's like, we got pickleball experts, I have tennis experts.
Not at the moment, but maybe that's something to consider.
Color for pickleball.
It will be.
There you go.
I'm just curious. I
They
don't
have
know.
volleyball striping on basketball courts all the time, and parents do not
Yep.
get confused, so hopefully it won't be a problem.
Volleyball, basketball, tennis, pickleball, I don't know. I just think we get people from both sports, it'd be great, so.
Yeah.
It is a good sport, it really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
I just want to say thanks for the work of the commission, of course, but then also addressing this group. I mean, taking the time to come here and provide insight and understanding, it goes a long way, I think, towards gaining confidence, and thank you.
Great, happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any other commission reports? So now we're down to the sewer district. Tom? Lake Sewer and Water.
Thank you. I appreciate that you saved the best for last, Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council, fellow citizens, and staff. Not a lot to report, although it is very busy this time of year for the sewer and water district, compounded by the occasional must-do project. For those of you who find yourself driving the other side of the lake for friends or a scenic drive, might want to schedule the drive quickly or postpone it for a couple of months. Seriously, we're cooperating with the county in a major job that will replace the water line under the road from approximately the end of Lilac Lane to Greenwood Circle, vicinity of Greenwood. So that has everyone pretty excited. That's a pretty long run, and it's long overdue. Aside from that, we have open house coming up on June 19th, and if I understand correctly, there is a possibility that you, the council, may be interested in a preview, and we'd certainly like to arrange that in the event that that's what you'd like to do. You're welcome to come to the open house as well. Sewer district open houses probably don't set many attendance records, but we're pretty proud of what we've done there, in concert with you, the community, and so we will meet in the new Lab Ops building, as it's called, which is actually the former fire station. And we look forward to seeing you. And in the event we can arrange that, maybe J. Adams can be in touch with Katie. I see Katie's nodding and confirming that my memory is correct. Other than that, any questions or? Yes.
Yeah, how's the level of the lake? Have you opened the outlet for the season?
Well, we've opened it and closed it. So yeah, the snowpack was good, and the water coming through the lake was good. Those are really good signs. It's really coming off quickly, as we all know. It's a terrible thing to wish for rain in the middle of a week of weather like this in the early spring, but hopefully we'll have some more. And all you can do, as you know, is allow the lake to get to the adjudicated level, and at that point it will go over the gates, and if there's excessive runoff, then we'll open the gates. And some of you may have noticed that it was a little flooded down in Sprague and Liberty Drive for a couple of weeks earlier last month, but it looks like they're closed for the summer now. Yeah.
Was there ever a possibility to put a dry well or something there? That seems to be a constant thing, somewhat constant, but if you get some overflow, that the water accumulates there.
Well,
which is right in the middle of the trail.
that's a good question. Actually, it doesn't seem that many years ago, but maybe 15 years ago, that channel was cleared because there's a natural sump right behind the Jiffy Lube. And once the water gets there, it's amazing how quickly it disappears in the aquifer. But before that, whether or not they considered a dry well, I don't know. That drainage channel has been the that access point. And you know, although it's been many years, it's been a problem. If you don't get that water moving away from the lake, the possibility of flooding for some becomes a...
Over the years, I was living on Sprague, I traveled that extensively every day, 2 or 3 times. I noticed when there was always the water there, with individuals who were on the trail, they actually went up on the road.
Yeah.
Which I think is a safety hazard, and then they would come back down.
I agree. Actually, in lieu of the dry well, I hope I don't get anybody in trouble here, but I can't figure out why they didn't raise that trail a foot or two. But 20/20 hindsight, as they say, right?
Thanks. Thanks, Tom.
I understand they're
Thank
going
you.
to be stopping the lake here pretty soon for the fishermen.
Stopping the lake for
Stocking.
Oh, stocking.
With some fish here pretty soon.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Fish and Game is pretty attentive to that. And although they have kind of marched to their own drummer, you know, there was a day when this was one of their major fishing license selling reasons because of proximity to Spokane. It's still pretty popular. But I've been told bass fishing is really good as well. So whether it's trout or bass, come on out.
Yeah.
Fish fry.
All right, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Devin. Fire gave us a talk earlier. Any other reports? Board reports? Not hearing. We're going to go into executive session.
10.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. It's 7:25. We'll be back at 7:35 to in discussion with regard to acquisition of property under RCW 4230-110-1B.
We're in executive session for about 8 minutes.
Might need another
Okay, we're back in session.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. Oh,
For the audience and all the citizens in Liberty Lake, we had a great response to formerly known as the Guild School. The Penny Drive was the same day actually as the car show. A lot of volunteers were out there getting poured on with hail and rain. They held strong, and what's formerly known as the Guild School, currently called Joya, raised one of the largest amounts of money in the city that they have in a long time. So to everybody that participated, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I sat in at Central Valley School District today regarding a parent advisory council. Superintendent Ben Small briefed the group regarding last night's Central Valley School District Board's meeting. They're dealing with a $12 million shortfall out of a $107 million total budget, about 6% total. Central Valley School District's administration is going to great lengths right now to prepare suggested changes to this process in order to adequately fund schools. One of the biggest challenges they face is the conversion of employees in their medical benefit plans from previously negotiated plans to the state employees benefit board, including the assertion of full-time benefits for part-time employees. So restructuring of roles within our school district is what we'll be subject to, consolidating, I'll say, part-time into more full-time roles. Superintendent Small outlined a collection of the rest of the cuts that the administration will be presenting to the board for decisions of application. Very difficult conversations, real focus on services, I would say, over materials, and real, I guess it's a results in impact on students. So I'm grateful for strategy going into effect. The only, I'd say, change to the most recent outcome of the state's budget was that rather than a $1.50 per thousand minimum, there is a potential supplementary levy to the amount of $2.50. This board will consider that, the school district board will consider that for potentially an August final decision, which would run in November, but not generating proceeds until after the first of the year. So the district will have to perform, I guess, with the funding that's available at the very least until that time. it's also a very difficult and challenging conversation with the constituents regarding increases in levies. So the board has to have a community conversation regarding the value of schools. That's important. I would just, for my own shout out to Friends of Pavilion Park with the upcoming cornhole tourney. Getting excited about that. Every team's now, we're going to be out there. That and proud to report that our Central Valley High School Bears lacrosse team will be hosting Woodinville High School on Saturday at Valley Christian, the former University High School, in the first round of the Washington High School Boys Lacrosse state tournament.
Yeah, when's a cornhole tournament?
Oh man, I don't have that date, but it's a summer event and look forward to it.
I saw one of those tables with lights on it, and bags and light lit up, so you can play at night.
Give it some style.
Any other reports?
I believe it's around August 24th.
Yeah.
For that cornhole.
Good to go. Katie.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So number one on the agenda is a project that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, so I'll make a presentation. The goal is really to provide a lot of details on a project that's moved very quickly the last couple of weeks. But what's interesting is 1 year ago, May 1st, 2018, was when we had the first discussion about retaining some lobbyists. And we did, over the course of time, retain those lobbyists to help us promote the I-90 Barker to Harvard Road, Harvard improved interchange and local roads. It's kind of a long list of words, so I'm going to go right down to what that project includes. And I really want to answer all the questions, but let me get through a lot of the data points because I think there's some important and critical information. So this project includes 4 projects. If you talk to DOT, they look at it as one project, but here in Liberty Lake, we look at it as basically Harvard and Henry. But the project does include Barker Road Roundabout. It would be on the north side of I-90 at Cataldo. Harvard Road northbound lane, so that would be a new additional lane northbound, a widening of the bridge. Harvard Road westbound on-ramp, so that's currently in place, and this project would extend that on-ramp. And then finally, the Henry Road overpass. So that's what the project scope looks like. So I'll go down to the next slide. And we'll talk about some pictures. So you can see on the far left is the Barker Road Roundabout. In the middle, you'll see Henry Road Overpass, and it spans from Mission Avenue on the north to Henry Road on the south. Excuse me, that should be Kramer Road. And then the Harvard Road widening and the westbound on-ramp. So that's kind of where the project lies. Before I go on to the next slide, but I wanted to also speak to the importance of this project and why I think not only in our community from the city's perspective, bridges build connections, and to connect the north side of Liberty Lake to the south side is just incredibly valuable. Public safety, our ability of our police officers and our fire service providers to get back and forth, especially during peak hour commutes. With the new schools going in, people to be able to get from one side of Liberty Lake to a school on the other side. There's just so much value in this project, which is, I think, why it was such a critical investment for our city. So putting in a lot of work, there was a lot of moving pieces over the course of time, but the legislature passed the transportation budget April 27th, so that was a week ago Sunday. The governor is expected to sign the budget the week of May 13th. I think the law says he has to sign the budget within 20 days of when the legislature passed the budget. So it's not a done deal yet. We're not expecting any changes, but it's not complete until the governor actually signs it. The project estimate is a DOT estimate. It's $26.9 million. So what are those? It's broken into bienniums. So in the current biennium, there's $3.25 million. Those dollars have been spent. Going forward, there's $20,750,000 and $2.9 million in the next 2 bienniums as they're described. When you add those all up, it's 26.9. The funding that we got from the state is 20.9. And so the estimated delta, and I want to underscore estimate because this number can change over the course of the project. But right now that estimate is at $6 million. But again, I want to emphasize that number can change. So I'm going to go down to the next slide. So there's some other useful information. So Liberty Lake, according to the the way the law is written. And council members, I did make you a handout, and there's a lot of data in there. But in essence, if we were to agree to the way the law is written, the city of Liberty Lake would be required to pay for all overages currently estimated at $6 million. So it could be more, it could be less. So I want to underscore that that number will change. And we won't know till the end of the project what it actually is. So it's a huge commitment by the city if we move forward. The contract with DOT will require the city council's approval. We've just begun, we had a brief, what I'll call a kickoff meeting with Mike Goodner last Friday, and that we have another meeting planned for next week. But again, they're putting together the boilerplate estimate, and then we need to do our best to get the best business points for the city on this project. But again, there is that risk, and I don't want to mention that there's not going to be risk in this project, but there's also potentials for savings. So let me talk about some of those things. With design, okay, WashDOT will not negotiate on who's going to manage the construction. They're going to manage the construction. They're going to manage the construction of the roundabout, the bridge widening, and the Henry Road construction, as well as the on-ramp. That, they told us right off the bat that they're going to be what they call the CM on those projects. On the design side, there are some opportunities where the City of Liberty Lake can provide those services. And so design, geotech, survey, right-of-way acquisition, all of that is under discussion. We don't know for sure that DOT is going to agree to letting us manage those contracts. I don't know if the intersection improvements at Country Vista and Mission, I don't know that they're included in the budget. We need to evaluate those estimates so we know what is included in DOT's estimates or not. And then also, if there were savings, and we've identified a few potential savings, that would be in the right-of-way acquisition potentially, in the design, and the other, we think the construction of the bridge widening might come in a little bit lower. So there are some potential savings, but again, we can't take that to the bank right now. So I'm just laying out the facts. Harvard Road and Henry Road, okay, not Harvard Road, and that is I apologize, that is a misprint. It's not Harvard Road. It's Henry Road is identified in the TIF lift project list as an eligible project. And we all know what that means. It's included in the boundary. It's potentially identified for funding, but again...
Katie, I'm sorry, you're saying Harvard's...
Harvard is not, and that is I apologize, that is a typo on number 7. I should not have included Harvard Road in that. It's just Henry Road. So basically it's the River District, and then it drops down to Country Vista between Harvard and between Henry and the flyover. So I brought the map right here if anyone wants to look at it. You can find it in there. So anyway, that is the information. I do want to say too, over the course of this project, there were a lot of different scenarios, different fundings were talked about, from 18 million to 20 to 22, and so there was a lot of conversations, and we didn't know until the budget came out exactly what it was going to say and what the contribution from the state. Again, what our lobbyists told us, and I think you picked up on this in some of our updates, was this was a very challenging legislative year, and not very many projects in the Spokane County got funded. There were 2 I-90 improvements in the West Plains near Amazon, and this project. And so it was a very competitive year for many, many different reasons, and we were successful in our application and moving those funds from a future biennium out to 27 and 29, moving them into the current biennium, but that doesn't mean that we're still not going to be required to participate financially. So with that, I'm going to answer any questions that council have.
Okay. And just to remind the citizens, when we hired the lobbyists, it involved the city, the fire department, and the school district, so it's a great collaboration from that standpoint. As citizens look at the list, and it's good clarification for the citizens to understand, and this is a question for Katie and the mayor to answer, you look at the list of the 4 projects, and one of those pieces include Barker, and citizens might wonder, how did we go about getting Barker included in that, and was the valley involved in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So Barker, I hate to go back too far in history, but in about 2012, 2013, WashDOT did what's called an IJR on Barker Road. That's a interchange justification study. And they found that Barker Road was deficient. They, being WashDOT, wanted to redo all of Barker Road, the overpass, the structure, and the approaches at Cataldo on the north and Broadway on the south. And they had the justification. In other words, they go through this, it's a very technical review. They had the justification to do that project. The project never got funding. And so in about 2013, 2014, we got Senator Patton to put in $26.9 million, and he earmarked that for, Mayor, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but he earmarked it for the project you're seeing today, which is the Harvard, Barker, and Henry. And if you ask DOT, they look at this, again, I keep saying that, they look at this as one project. And so if you were to say, boy, the Valley got a great deal because they're not going to have to contribute, I think they might think of it as, well, we used to have $26.9 million and today we just have a roundabout. So I can't speak for the Valley, but certainly they didn't get their full project out of this scenario. The project dollars got spread out over 4 projects. Does that help?
Yeah, were they aware of this, or?
Yes.
Did they have any voice?
Well, they were aware, they're lobbyists, and they were aware of projects going on out here. They were supportive of it from a standpoint of this is their project.
So, Councilor Brickner, when we put this sheet together, we put all the partners down here, and Spokane Valley weighed in. I will just, I don't speak for Spokane Valley, but my understanding is this was not their number one priority. This was not a project that they were going to advance. They were interested in getting funding for the Pine grade separation, bridging the valley. So they were putting a lot of lobbying efforts into this project.
I was good to hear that they were supportive of it.
Yeah.
A quick question. So given that Spokane Valley, may have think I choose my words carefully, may think that they got screwed, sorry, that's the only word I can come up with regards to their Barker project as to what it used to be versus what they're coming out with. What are the chances of them saying, forget it, we don't want the roundabout, we're going to try again for the full project?
It's a DOT project, it's in DOT right away.
That's
So you built in-
basically stuff that the design is almost made, right?
Correct, so they gave the Valley $1 million to design the roundabout, and then DOT will be the construction manager on it.
Well,
Excuse me just a second, Mike. They've already given the Valley
Right, so go back to my numbers.
design money.
Just like they gave, so remember I told you that if you look at that $3.2 million in 17-19, that's today. We got $800,000 to do the design of the on-ramp in Harvard. They got $1 million to do the roundabout. And so those dollars in line 3A have been spent.
Okay.
So they got money to do the design.
So, begs the question, are we going to pay to redo a design? Are we going to use their design? What?
Okay, so the Valley designed the roundabout. DOT is going to take that design and get a contractor to bid on it, and then DOT is going to manage the contractor. Our design on Harvard is about 60%. When it gets complete, then we turn it over to DOT to be bid and awarded.
Right, but we don't have to redesign or
No.
redesign the other one. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, I think earlier when you first started out, you mentioned that when we all met together with our lobbyists, okay, I attended those meetings and I can guarantee you, we did not hire lobbyists to include anything to do with the city of the Valley.
You're absolutely correct, which
So,
yes.
They were not hired to handle that, okay, they weren't hired to look into it or to lobby for it, it was just on ours. So if we spent money every month for those lobbyists to go talk to the senators, the legislatures, the transportation committees, under the premise that we were going to try to obtain funds for Harvard and for Henry. At what point did Barker get inserted, and why haven't we heard that from those people that we've been paying as legislators to tell us that it got changed to include that.
So I want to be very clear. Over the whole course of this project, our lobbyists never lobbied for Barker. They did talk to the lobbyists from the Valley to find out if the Valley wanted to partner with this effort, and the answer was no. So when you look at this sheet that we used as a fact sheet, DOT was very critical if we, Liberty Lake, went out on our own without including Barker, because I can't underscore enough, DOT looks at this as one project, and if we didn't include Barker here, and Senator Patton insisted that we include Barker, but if you read this, it says Barker is under someone else's jurisdiction. So we were very careful, Councilor Langford, never to have our lobbyists spend any time on lobbying for the construction of the Barker Road improvements.
And here we are getting ready to take it over, pay all the overages for it. Is the city of the Valley, or are they throwing in maybe some help on the overages?
No. So again,
What about our partnership with these great partners that we have? The fire department, the school district, you know, they've been great. They were included in the funding for the legislators, for the lobbyists. Are they kicking into this project?
we don't know yet. We're still in the negotiation stages.
No.
So
Okay.
if that's important to the council, then
Well, don't you
please.
think it would be important to
Well,
know how much they think they're paid?
Tony, I think to your point,
Well, I was just speaking with her, okay? And I was just wondering, right? I think we've already got the answer. The answer is we don't know.
well, to your point, you talk about our partners and how they can participate, or how they do participate. You know, they did participate in the lobbying on behalf of Andrew and Harbor because of the safety issue. Ben Small was pleased that, I think that the roundabout on the north side was included because of his buses, that's what he keeps his buses. And so that gives him better access to Barker. I think if you look back in the vehicles that we've chosen to bring forward to help pay for Henry and these projects, the lift, the fire department, as mentioned earlier this evening, was a big participant in that because they funded a portion of the tip. So I'm just going back to they had
the connection there back to something that happened many years ago. You can do that if you want to.
Well,
But
I
the
like
current,
that
the current is that there has been no indication or solicitation from what I can see on behalf of the city of Liberty Lake to ask these partners to join in with the estimated delta, which doesn't even include overruns. Okay? So we got a lot of work to do in a very short period of time. Okay? I have no doubt that they'll probably participate. I was just asking whether or not they've even been asked yet.
Can I add just a point of clarification in the handout? When you look at page 66, on number 27, it's highlighted on the side, and it says, this $6 million of the motor vehicle account -private/local, that is us. It doesn't say Liberty Lake, but that is us. So, I'm sorry, Councilor Kennedy?
No, I was going to have questions. What I'm understanding is that, I understand the separation of Barker, and they had funds pretty much guaranteed to them for the north and south of Barker. That's where the $1 million, I understand, comes in. Because I understand it was about $450,000 was assigned to design the roundabout on the north side. So what I'm understanding is that Liberty Lake at this point, mayor, council, or staff has not had any conversations with the Spokane Valley to participate in this?
So I've talked to their their deputy city manager, and we have, no. So have I asked them to contribute dollars to this project? The answer is no.
But Mr. Mayor, we've had negotiations or any discussions with them to partner on this, or
No.
anything about funding back to us or anything?
No, it hasn't been that way. In fact, to us, and kind of the reason we started this process down the road is our priorities have been Harvard, Henry, and Barker's on the last of our list, correct?
Never even made it to the list.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's on the last of the list. And from a standpoint of costs, we assumed that, you know, like we told them, you've committed, or the number that you put into the bill, or, you know, the account was $2.3 million for that roundabout. In my head, we built 4 roundabouts or 3 roundabouts now. Pardon?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity.
$750,000 each. And they have brick and so forth. So we assume that they're $2.3 million was more than sufficient money to cover that roundabout. And if you can build that roundabout for, let's say, $1.3 million, 1.5, that savings gets credited to Liberty Lake in the $6 million.
It was my understanding, and somebody knows better, you can correct me, but my understanding that the state or DOT pretty much had guaranteed the majority of, I mean, a big chunk of money for Harvard, or I'm sorry, Barker Road. So that's now thrown in with us. But we do have to understand that even though that big chunk came to us in this 20.9, any overages on Barker will be our responsibility.
I would describe it, because I think the words we choose are very, very important. The DOT doesn't look at it as 4 projects, it's 1 project.
Right.
And if there's any overages, whether it's Barker, Harvard, Henry, it doesn't matter where it came from, the city of Liberty Lake would be responsible for it.
Right, and I want the citizens and council to understand that we can save here, which I'm hopeful in some areas, and it might cost us more over there. So Barker is part of that.
Right, and then just for purposes of clarification, Barker Road Roundabout, design and construction, according to the estimates we got from DOT, is 2.3 million of the 26.9. So all of the $26.9 million that DOT has price tag that they've put on that project, 2.3 is for the roundabout at Barker. So the difference is for Harvard, Henry, and the on-ramp, including design and construction and right of way. So just, there's a scalable consideration I wanted to make.
Next steps.
So next step, so we're setting up a time next week to begin looking at a contract with WashDOT employees. If you guys have questions along the way, don't hesitate to call myself or Scott. The other thing, because there's going to be so much information, I wanted to go to my very last slide and encourage everyone to come to the city's website or our Facebook page, because we want to use that. I saw Anita here, so she's helping us keep everything current on our website, and so that share these links so that people can get information on our Facebook and our website. But again, our next step is to bring back information regarding the negotiations with WashDOT on the interagency agreement.
Okay. Mike?
Looking at the overall scope of everything we're doing in Liberty Lake, as we move forward, I think we really have to be totally conscientious. But we're looking at Trailhead, we're looking at this project that we didn't know what the dollar amount was going to be, and we're not going to know the end result of this until probably 2022, somewhere in there. So we are operating with a blank check on that. This has to have some impact for our consideration of what we're doing elsewhere, which includes Trailhead, other properties we own, other ideas we have going on, because this is something we're going to be tied into for the next couple of years. So I think we have to be very conscientious, and not so much to the point of thinking, well, hold it, we can borrow and build a lot of stuff here. Because it still comes down to, how do we pay for it? How do we service our citizens and keep the transparency going, which I think at times really has suffered.
Okay. Thank you. So Mayor, I'm going to go down, I'll speed up my pace a little bit. The next item is election registration, just so that if the public, I'm sure council's aware that the week of May 13th is when, if you want to run for election, that's when you sign up at the county courthouse. We have 4 council positions and the mayor position open. Solutions Summit, all-day event, May 14th. Councilmember Kamenskis, Langford, and Mayor Peterson have registered. It's free to elected, so if any of you would like to go, it's going to be in downtown Spokane. Let us know and we'll get you registered. Compensation and job analysis study. RJ and I are We've completed one interview, we have 2 more to go, and it's going fairly well. We'd like to bring back the results and a recommendation to award a contract on June 4th, I think our first council meeting in June. AWC conference is in Spokane. I know some of you have registered to go. I did get an email from Comcast. They're one of the sponsors of the event. They're thinking of doing a video of our call center, our customer care center here in Liberty Lake, so they might want to be interviewing some of you for that. So this is kind of a heads up if you're interested in getting interviewed for a video. Dates to remember. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read all of this. Keep your fingers crossed. Pavilion Park Splash Pad, May 11th. So I think that's this Saturday. Let's see. That's what they say. Okay, Farmers Market, May 18th. Then we go to we have a Liberty Lake Tennis Association. Larry West, I believe is his name, gives free tennis lessons. He's doing that on May 18th at Rocky Hill. If you want more information, go to our website. The Windermere Marathon is May 19th. Memorial Day breakfast at Pavilion Park is on Memorial Day, May 27th. And then finally, Orchard Park, soft opening, north side, June 15th at 1:30, so it'll be right after Farmers Market, and we're going to cut the ribbon and let the kids and adults have fun. So, Mayor, that concludes my report.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment? I personally especially like number 2, you touching base on that, because there's 4 council members and the mayor up, and there's 3 individuals in this council that has a large sigh of relief right now. That would be like for receivers a kid. We're not in that phrase, sorry.
You sure you're done?
I'm positive on that. What's wrong with the battery?
Well, good. Anyway, we're at the workshop discussion, right? So,
Okay, again, I'll pick up my pace, so I'll talk fast. So just to check in on the public works yard, if you've driven by there, we're moving a little bit of dirt. If you've driven by the north field at north of Liberty Creek, there's a little bit of earthwork going on. So you all got a draft in your packet of the agreement, and I'm just going to touch on the terms of the transaction. The property was valued by an appraiser at $423,000 a year or 2 ago. The terms, based on our conversations with the school district, is they would sell it to us for what they paid for it, which is $98,615.70. They would receive a 20-year use agreement on the tennis courts, which would be in Orchard Park, and it's just during the Selkirk and Green Acres Middle School tennis season, which tends to be in the spring. And then also the ball fields, a 20-year use agreement, and these ball fields are the ones that are over by the elementary schools. And then the north field, I didn't prorate the dollar amount, it's about $10. It would go back to the school district. The boundary line adjustment is underway, and you approved a task order, so that work's underway. We need to file and record it to create the parcels. And at this point, if things go well, Sean, I'm hoping to bring it back to council for their approval on June 4th, which is roughly a month from now. So if you have any questions or if there's any concerns, but that's the transaction. So they get the north field, they get to use our tennis courts, we pay them what they bought the property for, and it's roughly 3 acres. So I'm going to put up a map for people that aren't familiar. There's the property. The high school is just to the west of that, and it's 3 acres. I don't know if that's to scale. I don't think it is. And then I'll go down to the next slide. There's the north field for those of you that want to know what we're giving back to the school district, is the north field.
Are we assuming responsibility of mowing that field for that?
So at this point in time, the agreement that we have, Councilmember Kennedy, is all of the grass. You know, Jen, do you want to answer that question? Because Jen really manages it. We mow the grass,
We mow it,
we
they water.
fertilize it, they pay the water bill.
Right.
And they're both about, we've estimated about $10,000 to $12,000, but they pay the water bill,
Right.
we mow and fertilize.
Yeah,
So this would
I
be
think it's good, yeah.
probably a good deal.
And they allow us to schedule it.
Okay.
They what?
They
And we shoot
allow
our
us
fireworks
to
over.
schedule it for field play, field use.
For the citizens' sake that haven't seen the agreement or haven't had a chance to look at it, that have seen work going on there, the school district is also going to finish the frontage for improvements as well.
Correct, so that's another contract, but we have a contract to do the parking lot just to the west of that, and then we're working with the school district on a change order, so they will pay for the frontage improvements. Our contract will not include the frontage improvements. So, does that answer your question? Yeah.
A little more clear, I'm a little confused with that. They're going to pay for the frontage improvements on the land that they're taking back.
So the property adjacent to Boone, on the property they're taking back, are frontage improvements that they are responsible for.
Right, where we are extending the parking lot, we're doing all those.
Correct.
Yes.
That is correct. And that contract has not been awarded, it's still in design.
Katie, have there been any transportation impact studies or projections on that site?
On this side, none that I'm aware
On
of.
the school property site?
Oh, for the high school?
Yes.
Yes, they have done a traffic study.
Okay, is there any anticipated impact on the city or transportation improvements on that site?
So Lisa, you reviewed the traffic study for the high school?
Yes, so the Henry, or the entrance to the high school, it does meet signal warrants at AM and PM peak hour. And, but again, it's the.
Real quick.
So I can't hear you.
Thank you.
On the podium, please, thank you.
So the entrance to the high school will meet just barely, but it will meet signal warrants at AM and PM peak hours for the school. And so there is that impact. The impact associated with building permit fees and REIT and sales tax is actually several $1 million. The benefit to the city. And one of the things that when we do the Country Vista corridor study and we look at all of that, one of the things we may want to think about is that one-time, assigning that one-time revenue to do improvements on that corridor. Including possibly the signal at the high school. It's roughly $500,000.
The main entrance to the high school will be 500 feet east of the flyover, and we have had preliminary conversations with TIB to put an application in this year to fund a traffic signal there, and they were very optimistic and they thought it would be a very good project. So we won't know for sure that it gets funded, but the goal is to use TIB funds to build the signal. But the whole corridor really needs to be looked at, because with the Henry Road, there's so many moving pieces that we need to look at the whole corridor.
That's already in our plan.
It is.
It is in our plan, and that is one of the projects that is, there's a timing issue with doing a corridor study. And with all that's going on right now between the Harvard-Henry Road, between the trailhead, etc., you have to do your corridor studies in good weather, and you have to do it when school is in session. We may not meet the window for doing it this spring. In fact, I doubt that we would at this point. So it's at our best case scenario is that it's going to be a fall project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Scott a question? Since we're on transportation. Scott, did you touch on earlier, could you give us an update on the signal?
It should be turned on either Thursday or Friday morning. It'll be
Very
on
good,
flash
thank you.
over the weekend, and then they'll turn it on over good on Monday.
Great.
Because we're being recorded, just for the purposes of the audience, so Thursday or Friday, the signal should be turned on. And will it be flashing
It'll be flashing over the
Flashing.
weekend.
4 or 5 days, and then we turn it on to red, green, yellow after that period of time? So it's flashing red on the signal and then flashing yellow on
Yeah, for everybody's benefit, the question was to be able to have it move back sufficiently, and the figure we came up with was 20 feet. I went in and gave Scott a bad time of the day. I says, good Lord, it's not 20, it's 22 feet. So it worked out well, because it turned out there was a gas line there.
Yeah, I want to make one more comment on the border study, is that we wanted to get all the one last comment on the Porter study, is we want to get all the traffic lights installed and functional, so we can see how that affects the flow. If we do the study too early, it wouldn't take that into account.
Thanks, Scott.
So I think we're ready. So are there any other questions on the public works yard, the North Field, and, okay, so I think, Mayor, the next item is
Food trucks.
food trucks.
Please.
I will also try and be quick, but just to give you an update on where we're at with the food truck amendment. So as I'm sure you all recall very well, back in February, we had a workshop and you remanded it back to the louder still? And you remanded it back to the Planning Commission. So to consider if a concept of allowing food trucks in the industrial zone. And so again, just for the benefit of the audience, our existing food truck regulations, first of all, we don't call it food truck in the code. We call it mobile food service establishment. But be that as it may, and food trucks are limited use in all zones. They require a temporary use permit currently, which is again, that whole section on temporary use permits is in City Code 10-4I-1, and they really are only permitted during special community events. Now, we do require a temporary use permit for food trucks, and it is an exempt procedure, so there's no notice required for it. It's only allowed on public property or on right-of-way when it's associated with a community event, and it's only allowed on private property when it's associated with a private kind of event, like a temporary carnival or a sidewalk sale or nonprofit fundraiser, that sort of thing. And the code currently limits it to no more than 21 consecutive days or more than 90 days in a calendar year. And then there's some additional requirements related to site plans, health department permits, etc. So we've workshopped this with the Planning Commission, and we have a proposal coming back that you'll be hearing, that will be going to public hearing at your next council meeting. And the proposed amendments would allow for food trucks in the light industrial zone, but it would limit it to one per property, and it's proposed to be only allowed as an accessory use to a principal use, with the hours limited to the hours of operation for the principal use. And the concept behind that particular requirement was to try and balance the concerns that council heard previously from our brick and mortar. So if this is supposed to be a benefit to a new business, let's keep it limited to when that business is actually operating. It will require a temporary use permit, and we will require business licenses and the health district food permits, site plan, as we said before, and we'll look at parking circulation, refuse disposal, that sort of thing. We also, the temporary use permit will only be good for 1 year, and they'll have to do an annual permit renewal. That's a way for us to validate. Obviously, if we ever have any enforcement issues, that temporary permit could be rescinded. Individual temporary use permits, the other thing that we changed in the code just generally was to address that the prior director's interpretation regarding the fact that for larger nonprofit events where they have multiple vendors, that we waive the fee if it's all part of that special or that temporary use permit. So there's a couple things I want to be specific on with you that's included in the code. So we do have to change the definition for a temporary use, because right now it defines that use as approved for a location for a period not to exceed 90 days. Really the heart and soul of it is that temporary uses are characterized by their non-permanent nature. So we're taking out the 90 days. What's interesting is that there's also in the preamble to section 10-4I1, that's the section that deals with temporary use permits. It also has that 90-day limitation. But what's funny about it is that it's actually inconsistent with some of the things that require a temporary use permit, like a model home or a construction trailer or whatnot. The definition was problematic to begin with.
Excuse me, so you're saying it's recommended to take out the 90 days?
Yes.
In a year?
Yeah, so this is how the new definition would read. Temporary uses are characterized by the non-permanent nature of the facility, site improvements, and/or the short-term or seasonal nature of the use. Temporary uses are subject to standards and criteria as may be required in the zone and require administrative approval for a temporary use permit as set forth in section 10-4I1. And we also changed it in the preamble. Again, in the I zone, we're allowing food trucks are allowed as an accessory use with a temporary use permit, the limited hours of operation. And in 10-4I1, we also are making changes, as I said, the preamble. Also, some changes to, as it relates to specifically mobile food service establishments, where we're now saying that they may be permitted outside of a special event when explicitly allowed in the zoning district. That may allow for opening it up to other zoning districts at some point in the future. But for right now, the only zoning district that would allow it is the I zone. Again, temporary use permit for 1 year with limited hours of operation. And again, as I said, fixing the, we had a policy director's interpretation that was never incorporated into code. The last bullet, individual temp use permits for mobile sales may be waived within a larger not-for-profit special event. And that's how we operate. It's just nice if our code is actually consistent with what we're doing. So procedural timeline, which you have a draft of the Planning Commission's findings, conclusions, and recommendations in your packet. Presumably they will be ratifying that tomorrow. So, you will see the timeline for the procedural timeline. We did go through the CPIT, etc. We have clearly engaged the public, and I want to underscore the fact that we did reach out both to the tasting room cluster of businesses that is developing, but we also reached out to the brick and mortar restaurants, which I will say we didn't really hear from them. We heard from the food or the tasting room folk, but and Planning Commission had their hearing in April. So the other thing I want to point you to at your leisure is in the staff report we do look at relevant comprehensive plan goals and policies, and there's actually a few that are both in terms of governance as well as economic development. So the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend that the amendments be approved as proposed. They also made an additional recommendation that the city review the effect of food trucks as an accessory use in the industrial zone after 1 year and consider expanding food truck uses as a possible non-accessory business. So that's something to be considered. With that, do you have any questions for me?
I do.
Thanks, Lisa.
Is there actually any monitoring from the city that when these food trucks are going to be there? I don't think the 21 days consecutive is going to be an issue right here. Do they, if they're going to be like at one of these locations twice a week or something like that, do they actually register with the city, or how do we monitor?
Yeah, so they have to have a business license, number one. Number two, they also will have to get this temporary use permit. Now, what I heard from the tasting room folk is that they're actually considering getting several food truck vendors to rotate over time. So they may have 3 or 4 different food trucks that are there periodically. They don't actually believe the food truck vendors are actually going to want to be at one location consistently. It kind of defeats the purpose of the food truck, I think.
Did I read something in here where it's only allowed 1 food truck at any particular location at any time?
Yes.
So it's not going to be like 2, 3, 4, 5?
Exactly. And that may be something that when you reevaluate in a year or two, that you may want to think about. But at this point in time, the recommendation was to keep it kind of limited, and let's just test the waters. And we're accommodating these new businesses, but at the same time, we're not opening Pandora's box yet.
Thanks for your work on this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just to make sure I'm on the same page, when you use the phrase as non-accessory business, that means that the truck must be there and associated with another established business?
That is, so as it's proposed right now, that's correct.
So he won't be doing business as food truck A by itself?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Good, thanks, Lisa. Ordinance 168.
Mayor, I'd like to move ordinance 168 as amended based on any input from the city attorney that may or may not have found any particular portions that were out of sync and needed to be rearranged.
This is a workshop, right? 168, so.
Right, yeah, go ahead. I think you're talking about from the standpoint of the changes that you made previously.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, we can walk through them. I have certain questions myself, but I think other council members should probably chime in before we get to that point.
Yeah, I guess my surprise was seeing what we had in front of us today in our packet looks exactly the same as what we had before, and we walked through some of these things about, getting titles right and different things like that, and cleaning some other things up, and I don't see any changes. And I thought at the last workshop we had asked somebody to kind of take a stab at cleaning it up a little bit, so when we reviewed it tonight, it would be more of a closer to a finished product.
So I wasn't at the council meeting where the workshop was, so I heard there was a discussion and that these edits were made. I think Councilmember Langford actually made the edits. So I'm sorry, was there an expectation that we would bring back a cleaned up copy?
I guess that's what I left in my mind with, maybe nobody else did, but, there are titles in here that don't exist, and, different things that needed to be cleaned up, for accuracy's
So I
sake.
did a mistake because at the last council meeting, I didn't hear any direction of staff to clean anything up, and we're going to bring back discussion on a couple topics, so.
And I'll interject myself. I had that same question. I had questions as to what needed to be cleaned up, what didn't need to be cleaned up, that aspect of it. And so I think there might have been a council member too, I think it might have been missing. And so then, if I remember, that have some clarification questions, because I didn't actually even get to the specific questions that I had. So relative to cleaning it up, I didn't take a stab at it either from that perspective.
I'd like to say, I was looking at my notes after the meeting, and the only thing I recall from that is that his recommendation, Councilman Langford, that for us to look at it, so one or two of the council members had not been there. If you saw any changes that we'd like to recommend, we bring it up in this meeting. I didn't really hear any direction to staff.
That being said, I don't think it's in any, and plus we said this is a workshop, I don't think it's in any state right now that we can talk about moving it forward. We need to get that cleaner version.
I guess, who do you want to clean it up? That's the question. Who's bad at cleanup?
Oh, your city attorney.
Oh, your city attorney, okay. So
Well, how about this? I'll go through a couple questions, concerns that I have. With regard to section 2 and the types of donations and the values, from a practical perspective, if you go from 10,000 to 0, just so you guys know, any donation that walks in the door, whether you're talking a rake or a donut or anything, is going to need to come back to the council. So I want you to realize that circumstance with regard to anything that walks in. If someone walks in with a stack of donuts for the staff on a Friday afternoon, then the city's going to have to say, I'm sorry, we have to get approval from the city council in order to accept that. So those types of things, I'm not sure that's the intent, but the way we have it right now with regard to any type of donation would need to be reviewed and accepted by the city council. So that's one issue. I'm not sure that's practical for the staff relative to that circumstance. I do think there's probably, although it hasn't happened that I recall in the 12 plus years I've been doing the legal work, there might be some advantage to putting something in there with regard to real property that's not in there right now, just to address it from the standpoint if someone wanted to donate some property, whatever it may be, that to come in there, because right now there isn't anything that identifies that.
So for example, where in the past it said cash gifts or donation, you feel something like should be added cash gifts, donation, or real property?
Right, just so that you have it in there in case someone, decides that they want to do that. Someone leaves some property in their will, estate planning or something to that effect, and that comes up and says we want to donate some property to the city for whatever purpose.
Sean, I have a quick question. I know you're on a roll, but so let's say hypothetically the Friends of Liberty Lake Library want to donate materials for a summer program or supplies or whatever. My understanding is even donations from nonprofits would have to come to council for approval.
Yeah, right now the way it is just be any donation, cash gift or donation. So anything that we donate to the city would be something that has to
So
go to
would you
council.
look at item C then and say, any gift or donation exceeding $500 or $1,000 or whatever?
I just think from a practical perspective, there should be some type of, whether it's a de minimis dollar amount, to avoid those types of situations so that, in essence, the staff is saying, no, we can't accept that, and maybe it's a perishable item. Maybe it's something for the gardens that are in the back or something along those lines that, needs to have something done within a week time period along those signs, or time period. I think it just might be something that's assisting the staff.
So based on the explanation, great explanation Adam gave us at the last meeting, about kind of how this came up and his concern about, the council administers the budget. We do have that $5,000 limit where expenses up to $5,000 are taken care of by the staff. Odin, how do you feel about putting the $5,000 in there, and anything above $5,000 needs to come to the council? How do you feel about that?
I proposed it as written, okay, for consideration of the rest of the group. And this really has nothing to do with expenditure values, okay, because at any time we can rescind the $5,000 limit as well. So as we move forward to prepare an ordinance, it's more inherently written in concrete, so to speak. I wouldn't be inclined whatsoever to include a dollar amount that would be associated with spending. I don't, as far as the donuts that come in, maybe, I'm not sure how many breaks we've had donated, okay? But I would expect that we handle it in an intelligent way, but that would be up to the council to decide that, no, they like it better if this clause was there. And I'll amenable to whatever you deem necessary.
And I don't profess to say that the donuts are coming or it's a rake. That was my example of what could happen. Understand why? Maybe I'm going to bring donuts for myself. I don't know, but I'm just saying that those were my examples of value relative to points that.
And wouldn't that also include, like, when the council does the lunch for the staff in the summer? I mean, technically that's a donation, right?
Coffee cup.
Whether you're accepting a coffee cup or whatever situation, that's my point, is to have something there that is to identify circumstances that I don't think was necessarily the overall intent of having to make it difficult for the staff to interact in those situations.
Could you maybe come up with some proposed language to cover that?
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Mike, did you have another question?
I was just going to say that I personally would be comfortable with a dollar amount of $500, just utilizing something like that, or $300 or something, because if donuts, rakes, things of that sort comes in, if anything else that's going to come in is a donation to Arts and Park or Jen's group or something like that, can get to us pretty quick. But I agree with you that if we don't have something there, clarification, if someone wants to go to the letter of the law, it's going to be kind of make us look a little foolish. But I'm not in favor of the idea of the 5,000, because I interpret that as strictly expenses that the city or staff has, and they don't have to rush us with.
we're entrusting the staff up to $5,000 in expenses. I would hope that we could entrust the staff with, $5,000 apiece in donations. This is my thought.
I'd just like to make a comment. I've given this a lot of thought, and the more I think about it, the more I think that I don't want city council to become the administration for the city. We're legislators and not administrators. And I think it's, we've had this ordinance for 10 years or thereabouts, and I don't know where it's created any problems per se for the city or for city council. So I'm not so sure that it really needs changing. We've looked at it and reviewed it, and we've come up with some suggested changes. I'm just not so sure that we should change it.
As I pointed out during the last workshop, there's more than one place in this ordinance as it is that gives the council the right to refuse, no matter if it's a donut or if it's a car or if it's a piece of land.
I'll throw it out there that I like the consistency with the $5,000 rule. I think it's consistent with our financial policy. I think it's hard for me to think of a situation where I wouldn't entrust our director level city staff to make decisions around that. Ultimately, it comes down to the city council if we have the final authority according to this. So I like the consistency. I agree with you, Chris, and Councilmember Moore. I'm struggling, I think, with the same problem. This seems to work pretty well, and I don't see a lot of issues to change it. I do not want the city council to be the gatekeepers of this. One of the arguments that's been made is, gosh, we might have to wait 2 weeks to make a decision as a city council. I don't necessarily agree with that either. If somebody wants to come donate a significant gift, you can probably wait a week or two. But I don't think it should be up to the city council. I think it should be placed more on staff to make those decisions, and out of just working as a team, that I think staff's really good about letting us know what kinds of things are coming in, and so I would support keeping this pretty similar to where it is right now.
My challenge has always been is that it had specifically mayor, nothing against our personal mayor, but that, or his or her designee, that would go to a non-elected individual. All monies that come into the city are controlled by council, from recommendations, budget, things of that sort there. It's the council that set the $5,000 criteria for staff, and also some of the staff has $1,000, and they have to go to Katie above that. So there was a reason why that was done. And if the state looks at it that way, and that's my interpretation, it seems like, why would we sway from that? Why would we suddenly change it and try to put a dollar amount on it, other than something like Sean was mentioning, $500, something like that. I think it's just a matter of cleaning it up on what is probably applied by the state, RCWs, AWC. That is our responsibility, and we have to be careful how we give that up.
I do want to say that I want to continue to thank the Parks and Rec Commission on how vocal they've been about the different projects and bringing it to our attention to include the artwork and the design and everything else. I think that level of transparency has been phenomenal in the level of communication, and I appreciate that continued effort.
I'd agree with Councilmember Moore about not wanting the council to perform an administrative function, to reserve for the operations of staff what I'll call transactional activities. We serve, in my opinion, to set budget and priority, but not to engage and interact on this kind of activity.
I'd like to reiterate something I'd said a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry, Chris, but I'd said a few weeks ago when this came up, is that where this thing surfaced at was section 1C. That is where this came up, and why the whole thing suddenly appeared, that said the mayor or his designee And then it said on C, the city shall maintain the final authority to accept, deny, or gift a donation. So for me, it was a matter of, when Councilor Langford brought this up, it was a matter of clarification. Is it, if the final comes to the city, then whatever the mayor or his designee was going to be looking at, that decision comes to the city, which is who? Council.
I'll interject something here. I think that you can't look at 1C in a vacuum with regard to the final authority, except I think the intent of that particular paragraph is with the idea that people can't just come and donate stuff to the city and the city's going to take it. And so with regard to the acceptance of the donations, that particular provision is meant with regard to that aspect of it, and ultimately having the final decision and not having citizens or individuals or businesses donate stuff to the city and say you're going to take it. You also then have to look at section 2, which talks about then the cash gifts and the dollar denominations and that aspect of it. So they go hand in hand relative to each other, as opposed to saying, okay, who's making the final decision? And certainly you guys can change, as a council can change the ordinance however you see fit. But I think to look at that one provision, but then not consider what the remainder of it is, you also have to look at that aspect. And 1C was with the intent of protecting the city and having say, yes, we want this donation. No, we don't want that donation.
I interrupted you, Chris.
Totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, where was it? So lots of good conversation. I would point out that regardless, I think there are still some tweaks that need to be made to this. You know, for example, the section about trees, you know, duly noted in those notes about being, especially with our updates to the tree recommendations, you know, the tree section B2 talks about minimum size of donations and all this stuff. You know, we need to tie all that back to some of the changes we made. So regardless, we do need to make some updates to this, but to what extent, I think that's still to be determined.
I mean, I certainly have no problem taking a pass at putting something together and as another draft document for the council's consideration relative to Councilmember Langford's revisions, and you know, for the council to comment on, and you know, whether they like a provision or they don't like that provision or what they want to do, and you know, as far as moving it forward and having a further discussion and or decision.
Why don't you have a meeting with Katie and Jen over the changes that are on there right now, discussion, what you heard tonight, and then come back on 21st.
Absolutely, because I certainly need to speak with Jen about the tree ordinance and those types of things, because that's not necessarily in my area of expertise.
We can bring it back as first tree ordinance on that.
I have a question, if we're going to take a stab at it, Sean. So if there's this aspect of the current ordinance that you think is broken or needs to be modified, I've heard a little bit from all of you, but if you could tell us what those sections are, that would help us. Of what exactly we're trying to fix, and if it's a dollar threshold, if it's a accountability, if it's a transparency. I have some ideas that maybe there's a public posting of donations, and so it's very transparent who's donating what and who made the donation and what it was. But anyway, just if you have a comment about what is in the current ordinance isn't working, that would help me.
Mike? Go ahead.
You had it,
Sure. For me, it's just, it needs a little bit of clarification on who accepts what and why. Is it a dollar figure? Under the dollar figure, it's the city administrator. Over the dollar figure, it's the city council member. I'm looking down in trees, right below trees is benches. That one, the Parks and Arts, right now it's the mayor, whose recommendation is Parks and Recreation Director. Who accepts what and why, I guess is what the main thing I'm looking at.
So, do you want me to answer the question right now?
No, that's what I want
But that's what
clarified
you
in
want-
the
okay,
revisions.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think we also talked about the definition of city,
City.
because I think it takes on different definitions in different parts of the document.
With what Hugh said there, I've always been in favor of what Hugh just mentioned on, comes with benches and things of that sort there. To really bring that to us is not necessary. I really don't believe it is. But what I have to go to though is that under state, federal, local government, is generally set up so no one individual has final say-so. We're a council of 7, which takes the majority. Okay? Staff has to work as majority of staff. We have Parks and Art. One individual does not make decisions there. It comes in where the majority moves ahead, gives a recommendation, which they bring it to us. Same thing with any other organization we have. No one individual is in a position to make that decision. We don't allow that with council. We don't allow that anywhere in government. So I think we seriously have to look at that. It's not a personality thing, and it's not a control thing. It's how is government set up? And the idea is there's many checks and balances you have, there's less chance of mistakes happening. No different than the negotiations when it comes to the city dealing with the state on funding and stuff. We need to be involved in that stuff. It can't be one individual.
I'd just like to comment on that, if I may. And we have a system of checks and balances. And as I mentioned before, I don't see where it's been a problem in the past. I don't think that it's been abused in any way. And I think our checks and balances is that we're legislators. We can always change the law, always change the ordinance. And it's a matter of what we want to change and when we want to do it and how do we want to do it. And if we had no checks and balances at all, I agree with you. But I think that we have plenty of checks and balances. There's been no abuses that I'm aware of. And if there are some, I'd like to hear about them. Therefore, I don't really see any necessity in making any dramatic changes to the ordinance. Thank you.
One thing I want too is there's a practicality standpoint here too that Councilman Kendra, I don't want to completely disagree with what you're saying, but there's a piece to this where whether it's us as a council or I'm going to look more at what the mayor's role and responsibilities are is he hires staff and ultimately gives them the direction to go make decisions on their own day to day. And so if a member of, there's a broken sprinkler head out there and a member of Jen's crew sees it, they don't have to come back to us and say, is it okay with you guys if I fix that? That would just bog down the system. So there's a practicality standpoint saying, what's the dollar limit? And so in that case, we said, it's $5,000. At $5,000, you need to come and ask us for approval. Below $5,000, go forth and conquer. And so I think it comes back to these donations. I see it the exact same way. Say somebody wants to come in and donate a tree, and it's not a really big deal. Great, just do it.
Yeah, I don't want us to get involved in trees.
Right. So I think there's a dollar. That's where my opinion goes. There's a dollar amount to say we totally trust you guys. Just go do it. And really big ones, well, we probably should talk about it.
And I think also what's important is that, it's not management by crisis. It should be management by crisis as that, we have a crisis, now we have to make a law or an ordinance because that happened. The idea is to make rules and regulations to take care of it before it ever happens. So when it does happen, we say, this is what we put into play. And if it doesn't work, we can change it.
We already have a law. We already have one.
I agree.
Have a law, have an ordinance.
Chris, I wanted to ask you, you had said way back in the beginning something with regard to, I think, plaques or size or something.
I'm telling you a different spot. Yeah, there was, I forgot which section it is, but, the specific instance that came up, says what?
7 inches.
Yeah, it was like 11 years ago, it was before I was on the council, but, yeah, the group health wanted to redo Rookie Field, and they wanted a bigger plaque than we allowed, and we told them.
So something bigger than the 5x7, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not quite sure how we handle that, but, maybe some wording that, if the request is further than that, then it comes back to council for discussion. That's a management by exception, not crisis.
Maybe run that through the planning.
Yeah, I just remember you saying that before, so I just didn't remember
thanks.
exactly what it was.
When you look at what we have to look at, consider certainly section 3 is one of them, naming rights. As you look at the last sentence, Now, this is about naming rights on the donor. If you read that last sentence, to me, it's academic. I don't even know why we even have it there. All such donations shall be submitted to the city council for review and acceptance, including proposed name to be applied to the project. Seriously?
So there are some cities that, so for instance, a mayor donates land for a park, and so the name of the park is the mayor's whatever. We don't have that here, but maybe that's what they were thinking when they wrote this ordinance. But there are times where someone will donate a piece of land, a statue, something, and they want to put their name on it. But I don't know that it's relevant to us.
You never say never, so you address what you want to potentially, if it arises, you have the ability to address it, so that's why you want to.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is that we make rules and regulations before it happens. And granted, Bob, yes, we do have something, but at times it's smart to go back and evaluate. Is it timely for the times we're in? Okay.
You got some marching orders?
I do, thank you.
We'll move along. We're ready to action. Action items,
Move action item, consent agenda 1 and 2, to approve April 16th, 2000 city council minutes, and to approve May 7th, 2019 vouchers in the amount of $1,261,723.13.
Second.
Moved and seconded, further discussion. Not hearing, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there we go.
Move general business number 1, to authorize the mayor to enter into a consultant contract with Kimberly Bowman and Associates LLC in the amount of $32,400 for community needs assessment and library master plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion.
Yes.
Bob?
First of all, I'd like to compliment whoever contacted Kimberly Boland about her services, because I was very impressed with her resume and some of the accomplishments that she has made. And she's the first person I've ever known who was a library evolutionist. Anyway, I'm very impressed with her resume, and I think she's very capable. And I asked Jocelyn at one time, I said, you know, how does this needs assessment differ from what we've done in the past? And she said it's community driven, but when I look at this is a company that they're library consultants. The consultants on how to build a library, evaluate what your needs are, and give you the roadmap with a strategic plan on how to accomplish your goals. I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you very much for choosing her.
Thanks, Bob. Any other comments? Not hearing, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
I move general business number 2, to authorize purchase of the Pavilion Park sound system in the amount of $13,679.41 and authorize signature of the agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
If I remember right, this was in the proposed budget and discussed it during budget season,
Right.
correct? Correct.
Further discussion? If not, okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go.
I move general business number 3, to award bid for the East Appleway Avenue and North Madison Street traffic signal project to Calvico, Inc. in the amount of $443,105, which includes base bid, inspection costs, and contingency.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Quick question, Mayor.
Quick question.
Katie, I know we talked about this before, that we're getting some great money for this, just for the record, and again, since for the
More than 3/4 of it's covered by the grant, and the bids came in low.
Great. And we're looking at installation by the end of the summer. Do we expect any
So when you
issues
award
with
the
poles?
grant, so yes, so yes, we do, so let me just explain that, and Scott's not here, so, we award the bid, oh, Scott?
Yeah, they say 16 weeks to get the signal pole.
4 months.
16 weeks to get the signal pole, so they probably do the same thing as they did last time, get all the foundation work in, and so it's just sitting there waiting for the foundation poles. So 16 weeks, I think we'd be lucky to get it in for the snowflies.
Is this about the same amount of money that it costs us for, other than $37,000 additional for
It's a little bit more.
And why would that be?
I don't know exactly. They're very similar. They're very similar signals.
Yeah. How much more? Not sure.
I want to say $40,000.
But a year's worth. A year's worth.
Roughly $40,000.
We got 2 bids on this.
We did.
So
We got
it's not a
2.
very competitive field. There's only 2 vendors pretty much in our area. So they were real close. They
Yeah, the bids
within
were within
$1,000.
$2,000 of each other. So I think it's.
Covico did the last one.
Excuse me.
Covico had done.
Yeah, the good part is Co-Vehicle did the first one, and they're going to do this one as well. So they'll move right over. There shouldn't be any mistakes.
And then, Scott, just to add, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but didn't we put some technology in this one to help with traffic counts?
We did. One of the things thank you for that. One of the things we put in this was what they call platooning, so that basically when you hit the first signal at Moulter and Appleway, that all the signals from there all the way flushing out of town all talk to each other. So theoretically, once you make that first signal, you should be able to drive all the way through and out. So that's not a very expensive technology. I think it was about $15,000, and it will involve some additional money, but I'm hoping to cover it underneath the contingency for a license. But the licenses are very inexpensive, and I don't have the details on it yet. But it also allows us to get traffic counts, so when we're doing traffic studies, it provides that information for no cost. It allows remote monitoring to a certain extent. So there's a lot of things that it does.
Thanks.
Who's, excuse me, Scott?
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, who's
Yeah.
going to be supervising this institution?
I'm going to.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Did you watch it?
We're the go-to guy.
Oh, do you want more?
Owen's gonna go out there.
I'm
Help
a-
it.
I'm a geek.
Take his golf cart out there. Take your golf cart out there. Come on.
There you go.
All right, further discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I move general business number 4 to authorize task force order 2019-003 for parametrics in the amount of $15,800 for building a pavilion at Orchard Park.
Can I clarify, with the building, really, they're putting together the design documents to build the building. So this isn't to build it.
And this is part of your original budget?
Correct, it's part of the budget you approved for this year, so they're putting together the design documents for us to bid it.
So I make that motion in recognition of
Of the design documents of the pavilion.
Yes.
Yes.
Chris, and you second.
Okay, so, good to go?
Go.
Further discussion, not hearing, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there you go. Resolution. Hey. Or RJ.
Resolution 19-255, resolution City of Liberty Lake, Spokane County, Washington. A resolution providing for the disposal of certain inventory items deemed to be surplus to the reasonable foreseeable needs of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington.
I move resolution number 255.
Second.
Moved and second, further discussion?
Discussion. What would be certain personal property? Why would the city be trying to dispose of personal property? Or is that supposed to be personnel or what?
All that stuff is considered personal property as opposed to real property. So that's the distinction between
A chair.
a chair or a rake or not a donut. I didn't say donut.
It's the box at the door.
There you go. Okay, it's not any one person,
No.
just the cities.
Correct.
Correct, thank you.
Any further discussion? Not hearing, all in favor, raise your right hand. I count 7 on 7, it's about. Upcoming agenda.
So first I want to thank Tate for helping us out with our minutes. And Ann will be back. So Ann will be here, if all goes well, next council meeting. So on the agenda, we have the food truck amendment. We have a site design review ordinance workshop with Lisa. We have the Spokane Conservation District program. They are bringing someone to talk about their conservation program. We have the purchase of 2 turf cats we have an award for crack sealing, and then we will hopefully have a professional service agreement for the job compensation study. And I think I caught everything. Mayor?
Okay.
Oh, and I guess the ordinance, the donation ordinance, so, we'll bring that back.
First, I want to recognize that for the first time in a while, this is being live streamed, so thank you for that. It's great to get the information out to the citizens. Kitty, has the Lions Club or any representative of the Lions Club reach out to you? I brought up a while back, I know there are some city council members that weren't here to discuss some of the improvements they're looking for support on at no cost to the city, but more just a support for some of the
Is this in
areas.
the Arboretum area?
Yeah.
So I read the email from Wendy Van Orman, and I haven't followed up, but I will and see where she is with that. She sent the email to all of you,
Yeah.
and then I haven't followed up with her, but I can do that.
Perfect, thank you.
Wouldn't that also be falling under the?
Donations, exactly why I brought it up.
So, one last shot at the apple, bite at the apple. This is citizen comment time. I'll rush the podium. No one stands between us and adjournment, so we're out.